a very special edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard interviews. And when I always say it's very special because they are very special, but this one is very, very special because it is one of Lee and I's oldest friends from college. He's a producer at ESPN Radio and Sirius XM. He is the one, the only, the third member of the original Triple Play, Ray Santiago. Ray, how's it going, buddy?
A triple play reference right off the bat. I mean, first of all, guys, thank you so much. It's an honor to chat with you. I've been watching you guys do this. I get a kick out of it every week or every 2 days that you put one of these out. You've done some amazing interviews. You've gotten some amazing guests. I'm real proud to see you guys doing this, and I'm real happy to be on with you today.
Well, we're proud to have you on. I got to give the audience a little bring them up to speed on what's going on here, because there's a lot of deepness here. So number one, what Ray in LA was referring to before, we had a show, the three of us in college. It was the first student-produced show at Montclair State University. It was called Triple Play, and we basically just sat around a table and talked about sports all the time, which apparently was a good idea 16 years later. Now, it has been 16 years since our last episode. And we were joking before the show, there's going to probably be a lot of people see this and be like, oh my, they're back together, which could mean trouble. It could be good things. You'll find out if you keep listening. The second thing that I have to acknowledge, and he never takes credit for this, but Ray introduced me to my wife, and my wife and I had kids, both of them. So if I never met you, I don't have my wife and kids, and I'm always indebted to you for that. But you're always like, oh, it's not a big deal. But it's because of you, man, that I met my future wife. Once again, thanks.
I always say that you overstate that. I think you guys would have met each other some way, somehow, and you guys are one of my favorite couples, no question about that. It's been too long, man. I know we're a lot closer than we used to be, and hope one day when this whole mess is straightened out, myself and Jennifer, my girlfriend that I live with here in Fort Lee, New Jersey, oddly enough, we'll take a drive down there and see you guys. But like I said, man, it's been too long.
Here's the deal, man. We're going to have steak sandwiches, cheese steaks here in Philadelphia. And you know who's not going to be here to enjoy that?
Who's that?
Ray. Because he won't fly
I'm now
over.
The farthest away now of the three.
Yeah, somehow. I moved to another country, and this dude can't even make it back. Oh, no. In all seriousness, no. Ray, I don't know if you remember this, but what's funny, and I'm not going to get into a long story here, is you invited Janet, my wife, over to our dorm room because we lived in the same apartment. And funny enough, I don't know if you remember this, but it was football season. I was watching the Eagles, and I had a terrible cold. And this is back when the Eagles were winning the division every year and winning the, losing in the championship game every year in the NFC. And I had a horrible cold, and she brought me medicine. But if you had invited her over, I never would have met her. So, I mean, maybe that star-crossed thing would have happened. But anyway, look, I don't want to get sappy on the episode. We have to talk sports and geekdom. Thank you very much for doing that. This is a trifecta of friendship that has been around for we're coming on 20 years now, believe it or not. So it's an honor to have you on our show. I just want you to know that.
Awesome, man. And I'll say one last thing about it. I remember how you told me that you guys were going out. It was actually that later on that summer. You left me a voicemail. You had a habit of leaving me voicemails all the time. And like you were talking about was it going into sophomore year or was it going into junior year? I can't
probably
remember.
Junior. It's probably going into junior year.
But you left the message and you were just talking about plans that we had for the year, some stuff we could do audio television wise, and you rambled as you sometimes do, which I appreciate you for. And then at the end is like, oh, by the way, Ray, Janet and I are starting to go out, so I thought you'd like to know. It's just like, well, that's
I have no recollection of that.
But hey, great.
Yeah, well, she put me in my place, and that's when the rambling stopped, even though I've rambled on this episode already.
Right. I was going to say, the rambling doesn't always stop. Maybe we should have Jan on the next episode. We'll have Jan on as a guest.
If you want to talk about medicine and real topics that matter, we could do that.
Listen, I'm sure.
No,
I'm sure she's got a lot of relevant information right now. So definitely.
Hey, Gritty says we need to get back on track right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, you mentioned
Gritty didn't go to Toronto.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we will talk about that later because the NHL just agreed upon a 6-year extension for the CBA, which of course is a big deal. But first, you guys mentioned football. We should get into it. A lot of big football news, of course. July 28th is when The training camp's supposed to finally open back up. We're recording on the 11th, so that's about 2.5 weeks from now. We know we have some folks who out there who listen to the episodes a few days after they come out, so we like to date them. But these guys need to get back on the field as soon as possible, because it seems that every NFL player out there just can't stop putting their foot in their mouth or getting themselves into more and more trouble. Lee and Ray, let's start with the thing out of Philadelphia this week with DeSean Jackson.
Yes.
Lee, I go to you first, just because we've talked about actually many times this show how much we hate Nazis.
We do hate Nazis quite a bit on this show.
We are big fans of Wolfenstein. Nazis are bad. Guys, DeSean Jackson tried to quote Hitler this week and tried to play it off as it not a big deal. What are your thoughts on this scenario? Who wants to take it?
my thoughts are this. If this was an episode of Family Feud and the question was, or the topic was, we polled 100 people on the worst people in history of mankind to quote, who was on the top of that list? It's Hitler. Yeah. Survey says, bing! Okay, it's the number one answer. And guess what?
I think it would get 100 probably.
Yeah, it was only one answer up there. But look, DeSean Jackson made a grave mistake. I give him credit for owning up to it pretty quickly, taking it down. The Eagles acted on it very quickly. The Eagles even came out again. So the first thing they did was make a statement about how this is not representative of the organization. It's not okay, and they're talking to him. DeSean Jackson immediately made an apology video, which he posted. And then the Eagles even followed up with that, while they appreciate that it's not enough and he better take action to speak to the Jewish community and really educate himself on that time period and Hitler and everything that is wrong with that situation. So I thought that the Eagles handled that pretty well. I mean, a lot of people were calling for him to be kicked off the team. Look, the guy made a major mistake and he's going to pay for it. The Eagles are not known for kicking players off the team when they make mistakes. I can go back to Michael Vick, Jonathan McNabb. I mean, we can go back pretty far with this. And look, had he fought this or had he not apologized and followed up, I mean, I would be calling for him to be off the team too. But it was a horrible situation that I think was handled well. You guys may agree or disagree with that. I'm not saying this because I want DeSean Jackson on my team and I need him as a wide receiver. I'm saying this because, if he learns from this, other people will learn from it. And that's really the key. Look, with everything going on in the world and everything we talk about, anti-Semitism is not welcome either in the vast majority of things going on, and Ray and I have spoken about that every week so far about our stances on that. But it should be a conversation. Obviously, if you have thoughts on that, feel free to share them. But I thought it was handled okay. I mean, I wouldn't say it was great, but it was handled okay.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a great way to handle that whole situation because every angle of it is ugly. And on angles, there's so many that I can approach this from. I guess I'll start where you did, how the Eagles themselves handled it. And it's rare because we actually have a prior case study with the Eagles. You mentioned a couple of incidents that they've had in the past, but yet Riley Cooper is the one that comes to mind. You have that incident, that real ugly incident a few years ago, and Riley Cooper didn't get cut. He got fined. He had a stern talking to us like, "Are you out of your mind? We're like, why would you do this? Why would you say this? Why would you act this way?" In DeSean Jackson's case, look, I understand that he was trying to uplift the black community in what he was saying, but first things first, to uplift your community, you shouldn't have to tear down another one, and especially another one that has had its own issues with being maligned, being attacked, so that's right out of the gate there. You can get your message across without trying to tear someone else down. Secondly, and we were joking about this before the show, but we've been talking about this all week at ESPN, unfortunately, and the theme that I kept pounding home was there's a basic human line of decency that you can follow, and as Lee said, that line might just say, don't quote Hitler. Like, whatever you do, don't quote Adolf Hitler. We'll go back to the old days when internet flash cartoons were a thing. Remember those old Napster things? Napster, bad. Hitler, Bad.
Yeah.
Stay away from Adolf Hitler. It's like so yeah. Now, in what's a tumultuous time in our country, you've got a situation where, yeah, DeSean Jackson said what he said, and that was bad enough. But then you have it being compounded by a guy like Steven Jackson, who was a friend of George Floyd, the man who was murdered in Minnesota, and had been a face of the front line of, well, we need to make changes in this country. And he'd done a lot of good. And boom, by going all in and then doubling and tripling down and doing all that, he essentially erased all the good that he's done over the last 2 months.
Right. Yeah, and it's a shame too, because like the way things work right now, where everything that's said is out there all the time. I mean, in a way that's very good. I mean, actually, Will Smith made that great quote about that it's not that police brutality is on the rise, it's we're filming it now. You know, and I love that quote, because that was eye-opening for me as a white person of like, you know, that's a really good point. It's been like this forever. We're just seeing more of it now. So, yeah, I think the key for me, before Ray, I'll let you jump on this too, is the last portion of what the Eagles said is the education. You know, I was asked really early on when this happened, like, what do you think about him quoting Hitler? And I said, I honestly think he probably doesn't know a lot about Hitler. I mean, he probably knows he's a bad person, but he probably isn't educated on World War II and the Holocaust and concentration camps. And, you know, at least I hope that's true, that it wasn't taught to him. And I think that that's something that's happening in schools now. I've talked to a lot of people that are younger than me, and it just doesn't seem like World War II is being taught anymore in public school at all. Or it's just being kind of breezed over in a week. So we have to learn from history. And it's not just Hitler. It's Napoleon. It's, you know, everyone through history. Okay. Genghis Khan, I love this stat, by the way, but Genghis Khan lowered the temperature of the earth because he killed so many people. Like, you know, we don't learn about that guy. And that was conquest. And he's kind of heralded now as this kind of like superhero. Right. So we need to learn these things. And look, I hope the education takes place. And I hope he takes a Michael Vick type approach, which is what Michael Vick did to, and this is a totally separate thing, but what he did to dogs is really unforgivable, but he's probably done more help for dogs now because of that and what he's learned about. You know, that's what needs to happen here, because it's going to be tough to support this guy moving forward. I'm Jewish, for those of you who don't know, so it's very insulting to me, like many other people out there right now with what's going on. Anyway, Ray, I should let you jump on this too.
Yeah, no, just to follow up on both your points, like Ray said, obviously you don't want to take down another group and use them as a stepping stone to lift yours up. It should be a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And that's how it should be. We all want to get to the same level instead of you shouldn't have to push someone else down to raise yours. It shouldn't happen. I mean, and then of course, yeah, I mean, this is obviously terrible. And like to Lee's point, like I was gonna say too, yeah, it's education. It's the fact that. And we can get into a whole socioeconomic thing about like certain neighborhoods obviously have worse education than other neighborhoods. And this, again, is a systemic thing that's been going on for years and years and years. But it comes down to the fact that a lot of people in this country are purposely kept in the dark on a lot of things. And then, unfortunately, when you're uneducated and have a spotlight shown on you, you are, you know, things get blown, you know, get taken, you know, you're kind of left out to dry, but it's not necessarily your fault because you're not, you know, ignorance isn't an excuse. Yeah. But it's, you know, you have to look at the whole thing. Again, it's like you mentioned, like Michael Vick, he educated himself after the fact, but he grew up in this culture that it was okay to do what he did to dogs. Yeah. Doesn't make it right, but at least you can kind of see that human element. And again, it comes to a systemic thing where we have to go out of our way to make sure that the next generation is smarter, is better prepared, so that they're not at the point where they think it's okay to quote Hitler, because it's never okay to quote Hitler.
Yeah, just to prove that point, I want to show everybody listening like how it never works. I could say something like this, or I'm quoting someone. Man, that Beck's beer was great. Adolf Hitler. It doesn't work. You see? It's a true statement, but you don't want to quote Hitler. Or like, man, this Spritzel was awesome. Hitler. It just doesn't. It just takes the oxygen out of the room. Don't quote the guy, okay? It doesn't. Nothing.
It should be very simple to just come to that point. Anything Hitler bad. And in closing, you guys both touched on a very excellent point there, in that Michael Vick was able to rehab his image somewhat. Obviously, some people will never be able to forgive him, but another person. We just lost Kobe Bryant this past year.
Right.
But Kobe Bryant had a major stain with what happened in Colorado in the mid 2000s. But Kobe Bryant, not a lot of people knew before he died, but he took a real long look at himself and said, I can see why this is such a terrible thing, and he became more of an advocate for women's rights because of it. So a terrible thing happened in Colorado, and Kobe Bryant would always have that attached to him, unfortunately. But he tried to make some good out of the situation, and hopefully that's something DeSean Jackson could do. I don't know if he will, but
Yeah, look, this is my closing thought on it. It is easy to be outraged, and I'm not negating anyone's outrage on any issue. It's easy to be outraged. And this is what I keep saying to my friends and family. What are you gonna do tomorrow? Right? Like, we're seeing a lot of people speak up right now for a lot of different causes, which is admirable. At the same time, it is, also very confusing for a lot of people. So what are you going to do tomorrow? Because if you're going to march on the streets and support a group of people, it doesn't really matter what the group of the people is right now. Is that just for this 2 weeks so you can have a Facebook post and said you did it? Or are you actually going to be an activist moving forward tomorrow? Right? Because that's real activism if you're living it,
Yeah.
So that's why I say I understand the outrage, but it's easy to be outraged. Will DeSean Jackson champion his understanding of the Jewish community, of the black community, of all the communities, the football community, and be an asset moving forward to all those communities? As Ray said, when the tide rises, right? That's a great quote, by the way, Ray. I've never heard that before. What are you going to do moving forward? That's really what I pay attention to.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping that, and I've forgotten all of this, but I'm hoping that this conversation he's had with Julian Edelman, who's a Jewish athlete, probably opens the door for that. So,
and Howie Roseman.
Well, listen. But I'll say this though, it's a little bit different, talking with your boss, talking with a contemporary. It's a little different. So
yeah, that's totally fair.
So we have talked a little bit about he's not getting cut, which is if he educates himself, this is probably the right move. Again, he has to rehab. But speaking of guys who might get cut in the NFL, we had a development this morning, literally a couple hours ago out of Florida. For those of you who don't know, we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show. DeAndre Baker of the New York Giants and Quinton Dunbar of the Seattle Seahawks were both charged with, I believe, 4 counts of armed robbery or attempted armed robbery. And I think Baker also had counts of using brandishing a weapon illegally. Came out this morning that a Florida Democratic lawmaker, a representative in the Florida legislature, was helping those guys pay off the supposed victims in order to change their tune so then the guys go back to their NFL teams and continue to play football potentially. This just came out as reported by the New York Daily News from where I saw it. And it's making a bad situation even worse. And so I'd be genuinely shocked if both of these men are on their respective teams come July 28th, which again is the suspected start, fingers crossed, of training camp for the NFL. Guys, what's going on? Like, I don't know. Like, there's so many things to talk about here. Why are you, as 2 professional NFL players, one of you a former first-round draft pick, robbing people? Why is a lawmaker getting involved in this? Why? I mean, it's supposed, I think he formerly coached them, I think, is part of the reason why he specifically had that relationship with these 2 guys. But I mean, do these guys have any future in the NFL? Is there any way this doesn't result in both of them getting cut and basically done with the league and probably prison time if they're convicted of these crimes, which the evidence is not looking good in their favor? Ray, you want to jump on this one?
Well, I mean, my head's kind of spinning from this whole thing because it feels like, we were silent for a little while on this saga. And it's odd because yesterday I saw a tweet, and I can't remember who it was from, but it was a lawyer that was on Twitter, obviously. And he was mentioning how DeAndre Baker's lawyers and Quinton Dunbar's lawyers were basically expecting the whole thing to be dismissed, and that a source at the prosecutor's office is like, oh no, we're not dismissing this. We're not done investigating. And so I kind of looked at it as like, oh, well, I guess this is going to drag out. And then I went to bed last night and I got a text from somebody who just shared that New York Daily News thing with me. And it is just like, oh. And you're reading is like, this isn't real. This can't be real. And I completely glossed over the fact that the politician was even involved. I didn't even notice that until I re-examined it this morning, and I was like, well, wait a minute. Now this is going like higher and higher, and it's clear that if the implication is true in regards to the politician, that this is something that has gone on before with this guy. This is not the first time that he's going to try to cover up something involving players from his district. And again, I understand it's Miami. A lot of players that come from that area have trouble past that more or less they can't escape from. And that's more or less what I heard about DeAndre Baker when we first got this story. It's like, guys, even though they have money, they're still going to do stupid things. DeAndre Baker was already kind of in hot water with the Giants because, one, he didn't live up to the billing of a first-round pick.
No.
I mean, he was only a rookie. And two, towards the end of last year, he was getting really flippant with the coaching staff and just sort of doing his own thing. And I understand they hired an all-new coaching staff. Joe Judge said it was going to be a clean slate, but at this point, like, the slate is as filthy as can be. And if this stuff is true, like, forget about it. He's not going to be a Giant this year, and his NFL career might be over.
Yeah, I'm going to go pretty deep on this. I'll tell you why in a minute. So, I'm going to take a little bit of a different direction. All right. One thing that I thought was going to happen when the pandemic hit was we suddenly learned that grocery workers, doctors, the postman, the postwoman, all these people were really priority all of a sudden. Right. And I remember for a brief moment, I thought maybe we'll realize that while we love sports, it's not as important as we thought it was in terms of the way we prioritize it financially. Right. And my first glimmer that wasn't going to happen was when Patrick Mahomes made $500 million for 10 years. All right. Which was good for him. Don't get me wrong. I mean, in sports, he's worth it, obviously. But with this situation, and I'll tell you why I said I'm going to go deep on this. You both may know, like I volunteer coach with the inner city high school football team in Philadelphia. Ray, you've coached youth football before. And I can't help but think, what is the message we're sending to those kids? Right, because one of the things those kids taught me, and I've always said that these kids teach me a hell of a lot more than I teach them, is their reality where they grow up is murder is a very real thing daily, and they can't get out of their town, and so a lot of them resort to crime, and when it's told to you this way, it's almost justifiable. And again, if you grow up that way, it doesn't matter if you're making millions of dollars at some point. I don't want to say it's ingrained in you, but you've grown up this way, right? So how do we curb that behavior? How can these NFL players who do this, it's an stupidly incredible story, teach these kids? Now, this is where I was going to go deep, and I'm going to kind of lay this on you guys. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do in the episode. One of my players was killed last week. He was shot in the head.
Oh, no.
Just riding his bike down the street during a very heavy murder week in Philadelphia. His name is Angelo Walker. All right. 15 years old, and there was no reason it should have happened. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was a good kid. So where I equate this to is it's a stupid story again. Maybe those guys can do some good and save some lives. Atone for what you've done. Start speaking to your local teams, and to be fair, a lot of the local Philadelphia teams come and talk to this team and explain to them, why you can have a different lifestyle. All right, this kid's dead, and we don't talk about him. I'm not saying you two, obviously. We don't talk about that on the news ever, right? We're talking about these guys that are just idiots, and a politician that felt like he needed to get involved, and maybe he felt like he was protecting him. I don't know. So again, I'm sorry to go super deep here. I didn't intend to do that when the episode started, but it's like, what can we do to teach the youth from this? Because there is a lesson to be learned here, right? Like, I'm not mistaken on that. There's something you can learn. This is something these players probably grew up doing, and I'm not judging them for that. But can they learn from this? Can they start teaching the youth? Because there is a major problem in our cities right now, specifically Philadelphia for that matter, where this is the lifestyle. And I think a lot of people, and again, present company excluded, are dismissing this as, oh, well, of course they robbed the shop because of this, and that. And they don't look in the neighborhoods that people are growing up in. And I don't think that's fair at all, right? If you didn't grow up in the inner city and you're judging people from the inner city and you're judging people that are outraged, as we talked before, in rob places when they don't feel like the system applies to them, what are we teaching these kids? Because if they don't get punished for this, or if they don't atone for this and learn from it, we're essentially saying the message is, well, if you make it, you can get away with whatever you want. Yeah. So again, I apologize to both of you for laying that on you. That's probably the deepest I've ever gone on the show. But, I had to say it. His name's Angelo Walker, for those of you out there. I'll never forget this, right? And he's gone. And the team is having to come together now and memorialize them. We actually got the team together because we didn't want them back out on the streets right now, right? But that's the deeper issue here, So, and again, I apologize for throwing that on you guys.
I mean, and it's not just obviously Philly. It's New York. It's LA. It's a lot of major cities, and it's
Minnesota. A lot of places.
Minneapolis. Yeah, for sure. And I think that, again, it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, is that it's a systemic issue, right? This is something that's kind of been happening a lot. I don't want to say the inner cities have been abandoned by a lot of our system, but it's.
You could say that, right?
It's been, it's been abandoned or even oppressed in a lot of ways, right? Like they've had the deck stacked against them, and again, look, I am as pale as a piece of paper, right? So like I will never be able to completely understand or empathize or relate on that level, right? But I can understand what's going on and try to do, obviously do better and everything going forward and but it's something that needs to change. And it starts at the beginning, right? Like Ray mentioned, obviously DeAndre Baker kind of grew up in a situation, a neighborhood of violence, an environment of violence and whatnot. And unfortunately, what you have impressed upon you as a child usually carries with you through adulthood. Doesn't matter where you end up going as an adult, whether you're drafted by the Giants or whether you are stocking shelves at a Walmart.
Right. Ray, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah.
Here's the thought. In the end, this is what these kids taught me. All right. And both these Rays, like I said, I have a hard time discerning between the two. Both of these Rays have known me for most of my adult life. All right. There's a question that I never learned to ask myself when I was younger that has, my wife has brought this up, but this is the question. It's what if you thought you weren't going to live past 22, or 19? What if you thought your life was going to end before you were 25? Let's just put it that way. What decisions might you make? Would you go rob a store to get what you want? And by the way, your life's not going to end because you're getting sick. It's just you might get killed. Like, I never had that perspective before. But if I had grown up in an inner city that I felt like I was abandoned and I didn't have a team, and I know someone my age or younger that has been killed, that would drastically change how I approach my life. Okay? And I'm not saying that robbing a store is okay. It's illegal. It's wrong. Okay? But I'm saying that when you start to see the psyche behind it, it really does change your perspective, at least on how to attack the problem. Does that make sense? Is that fair to say?
1,000%. Yeah.
So,
and that story that you told, unfortunately, and I'm so sorry for that young man's loss, Angelo. What was his last name? I'm sorry.
Angelo Walker.
Angelo Walker, like that. But that story that you've told about Angelo Walker is unfortunately one that has been told so many times.
Yeah, that's right.
And it doesn't make it any less tragic, but unfortunately, they have to be willing to listen to you. And when that sort of lifestyle is glamorized, it's hard to get them to sort of change that. And listen, I grew up certainly in a less privileged environment than some, and I know a lot of people that actually were involved in that lifestyle, but I had people to protect me from even looking in that direction. Yeah. But also I know many people that have become mentors. One of my best friends is actually a former coach of mine who does nothing but try to set an example for that because he came from that sort of environment. And you can try. All you can do is try. Just try your best to try and change somebody's perspective. And he's done it for many. And many people have done it for many. But even when you do escape, like DeAndre Baker, you're some are just gonna go back. Not all, maybe not even half, maybe not even 25%. I don't know what the number is, but unfortunately, that is a reality for some. That's all I can say.
Yeah. No, and it's sad and it's true. And also going to Lee's point about sometimes guys will get forgiven if they make it, but we've seen that a lot over the years. We've seen that a lot. Guys who get slaps on the wrist because they're a celebrity or a politician or an athlete. It's unfortunately that's kind of the way society has worked for a lot of years for a lot of people. And I think that, hopefully, yes, we start getting to a point where it doesn't matter your position in society anymore. The law is equal to everyone. Justice is blind, right? That's why the symbol of justice is the woman with the blindfold on. It shouldn't look at your standing in society and judge you differently based on that. It's something that I think that a lot of folks, everybody has to deal with. I think it doesn't, I think that it's something that you have to, and again, we all have to get to that equal playing field where not only it doesn't matter the color of your skin, doesn't matter your religion, it doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter how much money you have. We should all be treated equal in the eyes of the law, and I think that's a lot of, or one of the core elements of obviously a lot of this unrest that's going on in the country right now. And I think that, it swings both ways, right? If you commit a legit crime, if you try to rob somebody, you should go to jail. I was actually before this all happened, I was on jury duty in January. It was one of the most eye-opening and one of the best experiences I had, because to see actually the legal system work the way it's supposed to work and actually have a deep conversation with 11 other people about whether a man was guilty or not for a violent crime. It was a violent crime. I can say that it was a criminal case I was on. I'm not going to tell you whether we found the man guilty or not guilty, but all I'm going to say is I did a great job as the foreman.
It wasn't 12 angry men.
It wasn't. No, there was just one really angry Jersey guy who put 11 LA people in their place and this is the facts. This is how it happened. Yeah.
I was gonna say it was just a new play called One Angry Man, and Ray, I'm gonna do you the favor of segueing out of this segment because I got us into it kind of. So I owe that to you not to have to segue out of this. But in closing on this thing, I just want to say I said a few minutes ago about outrage is understandable, but it's easy. The head coach of the team I work with, Bill Seitzma, is doing a lot right now for that family, doing a lot for his players to help his team out of it. And he always has. But, other things too, I've talked to my wife about it. We're working on something to take action. And that's the key. I'm not saying that because I want people to look at us and oh, that's great. We're taking action because it's the right thing to do. Because something happened and I'm not going to sit idly by. Okay. And I have evolved. Again, these two people have known me most of my life. I've evolved a lot from when I was 19, 20 years old, where I didn't see any of this. I just didn't see it, right? It's something a lot of people are realizing right now. But here's the segue for you, Ray Santiago, because we pride ourselves on our segues in this show. This situation reminds me of a quote from Spider-Man, which is, "It's not about saving everyone. It's about saving one person." Great quote from Into the Spiderverse. I have read a report this week that Into the Spider-Verse 2 is coming out with Miles Morales. And they said that this film is going to make the first film's animation look silly. So, did you see Into the Spider-Verse? What were your thoughts on that? And what do you think that Marvel is really embracing Miles Morales now at this point in time?
Well, first of all, listen, I realize this is a high bar to set. Into the Spider-Verse might be the best movie that Marvel's made, cinematic, cartoon, animated, whatever you want to call it, or otherwise. It's just that good. And it shows you what you can succeed. Listen, the past 20 some odd years of comic book movies have great. I remember how we all got excited when Iron Man was a thing. It's hey, they're finally doing Iron Man. And then when they did the drop of Nick Fury at the end of the movie, and it's the Avengers, we're gonna get the Avengers.
It's so long ago now.
We're so spoiled now.
And so, we got all excited about what the possibilities could be. But then I do remember that we also got a little bit annoyed because certain liberties were taken with the characters. Well, Captain America's not supposed to do this. Yeah. Iron Man's not supposed to do that. The Hulk is not supposed to do that. But as we've gotten further away from that, and I kind of appreciate what the producers and directors have done in sort of getting away from the mainstream and coming up with their own takes on the character, which, you know, those multiverse ideas might have been the best thing that could have happened to the comic book industry, especially getting into the greater entertainment industry. And so doing something like Into the Spiderverse, giving us all these different versions of Spider-Man instead of Peter Parker, seeing the same origin over and over, just giving us something a little bit different. And everything about it was so well done. I really am a big fan of the Miles Morales Spider-Man, even though you probably couldn't find a bigger fan of the Peter Parker Spider-Man than me. I love Peter Parker as Spider-Man, absolutely do. But the concept of Miles Morales, of a Black Hispanic Spider-Man who, you know, in this essence is growing into the role like that somebody laid out for him, living up to the Spider-Man name. Then you throw in the Gwen Stacy thing, Nicolas Cage as the Spider-Man noir. Just the big fight scene on Aunt May's house with Lady Doc Ock. Like,
yeah,
everything about that movie, I could not get enough of that movie. And you know, people say, yeah, grow up, you shouldn't be watching these things. That was incredible, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are. And I what you're telling me, if the animation's going to make it look like child's play. Oh,
they said that.
I'm really excited at the notion of that.
They kind of said like, oh, they gave us a budget for this one. That's kind of where they went with it. And to your point, I want everybody out there to know, my wife and I have a plaque in our living room that says, "Don't grow up, it's a trap," or as I read it, "Don't grow up, it's a trap." But you know, some of you will get that reference.
Yeah, no, Into the Spider-Verse was, of course, absolutely amazing. And I think that's one of the best things about, I think more than any other character, Spider-Man lends himself, because it's been introduced so many times before, to a multiverse concept. Different Spider-Man wearing the costume. I mean, I think even as kids, it was introduced to us in the cartoon a lot. I mean, if you remember where you had Spider Carnage and you had to get Spider-Man from all the...
That was a great episode.
Oh, my God. That series was phenomenal. I really wish they gave him one more season because it left on a cliffhanger. Did he ever find Mary Jane? We still don't know. But, you know, I mean, and I think Miles, you know, obviously one of the best things that Marvel has probably done, is introduce a different Spider-Man. And he's become beloved and introduced in different ways. I don't know if you played the Spider-Man PS4 game.
Beautiful game.
Amazing game, one of the best games of the generation, hands down. And now he's getting his own expansion coming out later this year for PS5, where it's you play as Miles, where it's you have Miles and Peter in the same universe. They're best friends in the same universe, and what Peter is teaching Miles, similar to Into the Spider-Verse, but in Miles's universe, Peter Parker's gone, so he has to step up and become Spider-Man. In the video game, Peter and Miles are working from the same universe side by side. That's got a whole different thing. You know, it's different universes. Play the game, watch the movies. I could honestly sit here and write and spell out the web for you of how everything breaks off from the original Peter Parker and all this.
I see what you did there.
So, I gotta ask this real quick. We talked about this in a previous episode, but Ray in New York. Have you ever heard of Spider's-Man with an S?
Oh yeah, because I wrote
Because here's the thing. Okay, good. Ray Santiago is like he's been a Spider-Man fan as long as I've known him. I watched you play Spider-Man games in our dorm room. Okay, and Ray Carcillo in Los Angeles, sunny Los Angeles, California, told me about Spider's-Man, which is in the multiverse. Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie to you, man, it freaked me out. So I want him to just really.
Oh wait, I think I know where this is going.
I want you to explain this real quick.
So Spiders, I forget what Earth it is. It's 15,000 and something or whatever, right? Because our mainline universe is Earth 616. Spider's-Man it starts the same. Him and Peter and Gwen Stacy go into a science facility. It's the science fair for in their high school. There's irradiated spiders. There's an experiment going on, but unfortunately, Peter Parker falls into this irradiated spider pit, and the spiders eat him alive. They consume him, but because they're irradiated, the spiders all get a piece of Peter's consciousness, and they basically bond together in a humanoid form, and all the little spiders think they are Peter Parker. And what they do is because they realize they also have the consciousness that they are a monster, that they're a monstrosity, and that's why they put on the Spider-Man costume, because they want to help people. And so basically, and so what they do is that when they find a bad guy in the street, the spiders, similar to what happened to Peter, they eat the bad guys. They pull off their mask, almost Mortal Kombat like, and then consume in a swarm form the thugs and the predators and the bad guys in this alternate universe. And they still get Gwen Stacy in the end, where basically Gwen's like, I still care for you, Peter. And like the spiders are like, we're a monster. And they're like, but I can separate, I can make you a human. And like, because Gwen goes become like a super scientist. She goes down that route. And the spiders are basically like, no, we're a monster. We're a good monster because we're fighting the bad guys and we're eating them because we're, carnivores and stuff. But like, don't worry about it. Peter Parker's dead, mostly. And then he goes and he swings away. And it's just like, yeah, so that's Spiders Man from Earth 15,000 whatever.
Sounds epically terrifying.
It's
terrifying,
it's pretty
right?
nuts. It's pretty nuts.
I don't think it would have worked. But they did it anyway.
Yeah.
So right now you know about
that might show up in the Spider-Verse Part 2. It might.
I just want more Spider-Man 2099. That's all I want in Into the Spider-Verse 2. That's it. Oh goodness, but. So we mentioned Spider-Man video games. Ray, you playing anything right now? Are you playing any games right now? You had any time to play anything?
No, I've got more time than I know what to do with, unfortunately. It's just go to work, and even though we're technically socially distancing, and what ESPN's doing is they've gone to the quote unquote single operator system, which we've been doing since March, which is literally we just have one producer / board ops / whatever running things in the station. Every host is operating out of his own house. Which is, for me, I've got 3 hosts on my show, so it's quite fun, and then sort of just come home. So I unwind late in the day to play some video games, and I've been doing a lot more of it lately. My girlfriend just bought me this beautiful gaming chair, so I'm trying to get the use of it. Right now, I'm just playing a lot of old sports games. Well, not old, but NHL 20. I've gotten a lot of run. NBA 2K. PS Plus just put that one for free, so I'm getting mileage that I can out of it. I actually did just play Around the Spider-Man the other day. Mortal Kombat has gotten a run. I've also played a little bit. I've gone old school and downloaded Sonic Mania. Have you played Sonic Mania?
Yes.
And just like the nostalgia that game brought me. I'm a big Sonic the Hedgehog guy. I really dismayed at how the franchise kind of fell off after Sonic Adventure. And but like, if they brought stuff like that back, I probably would pay the $10 and just play Sonic all day long. Big fan of those side scrollers like that. Just really old school in my gaming. That new Spider-Man expansion pack I'll be really into when it picks up. Whenever you give me a new Grand Theft Auto, what's on the horizon, Ray? I know some things are on the horizon. That
Avengers is coming soon.
I do have a pre-order for that. So we'll get that at some point.
You got Cyberpunk 2077 coming later this year. You have GTA 5 being ported for the 3rd time to a new generation. Like you mentioned, please just give us a new GTA.
Just give us Vice City on the new generation, please.
Yes.
Just like you've done the other 2. Give us Vice City, please.
Oh my goodness.
We all want that game again.
Yeah, we're sick of GTA 5. We got it. Okay, cool. You can do robberies. Awesome. Give us.
I'll tell you what. I would even play GTA 4 right now again if you ported it into a new console because I just got a real kick out of playing in a New York City. I'm in New York City every day and just to play the video game version of it and just do all the damage and destruction that you want, and it's perfectly legal because it's a video game.
Yeah,
the things you want to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's the thing. GTA 5, I appreciate because it's in in LA, right? So obviously I'm here, so I'm familiar with a lot of the landmarks and stuff. But it's also okay, it's been 10 years, guys. Can you give us anything else at this point?
It's Street Fighter 2 syndrome. How many games do you need?
Oh
okay,
my gosh. Turbo and Alpha and all this other stuff.
Tournament edition.
Yeah,
but the sad thing is that there are people who buy them again and again and again, and it's easy money for the companies. And we talk about we've talked about this a lot, where it's especially now because actually this is something we talked about on last week's show, right? I want to get your thoughts on this.
The sports business model.
Well, I mean, it's that obviously microtransactions are starting to phase themselves out, thankfully, of gaming. Like EA has had so much backlash and lost so much money this generation because people got so mad. I remember the last Need for Speed. Not the last one, the one before that. I think I don't even remember. I gave it a 4 out of 10. And because I was one of the few people who called it, I'm like, this is a gambling mechanic. You're literally spinning a slot machine, paying money for slot machine spins to get better parts for your car. How does nobody see this as a problem? Obviously, that game flopped. EA lost a lot of money. More studios closed because that's usually what ends up happening. But the point I'm getting to is that the cost of game development is rising. And the game industry for a while thought microtransactions would be a way to mitigate that. People obviously, rebelled against that, and for the most part, there have been some people who don't think and are mind, microtransactions. Sure, I'll pay more money for Madden Ultimate Team, whatever. But what they're talking about is with the next generation of consoles, as now I ramble, trying to get to my question, is they're talking about a $70 price point again for a basic video game, getting away from the microtransactions, getting away from cheaper DLC potentially. But it's that $70 initial buy-in. What are your thoughts on them after 25 years, raising the price of video games again?
Well, listen, has it been 25 years? Well, I was just going to say, it doesn't seem like that long ago when the games themselves were 50 and they were 40 before that on the lesser consoles. So listen, if the game is worth it, I'll pay the extra $10. I don't care. Just continue giving me the quality. And obviously I'm a little older. I can afford it now a lot better than I could in the past, but I want something that's worth the money. And if I'm going to play something for over 100 hours, then it's safe to say it was worth my $60 or $70 if it comes to that, right? That's a fair assessment. So I'm totally fine with it, but give me something worth playing. And on that note, EA just in general, not just their sporting franchise, but you just talked about it, the microtransactions, the laziness when it came to certain games. I'm a big Madden guy, have been for years, but I was always a franchise player. Lee can tell you I played franchises in the dorm all the time, going 5-6 years in the future, trying to make a dynasty out of the New York Jets, for crying out loud. So I'm really disappointed in what they've done with the upcoming Madden. It seems like franchise mode has been a problem for a long time. I don't know how true or not. I feel like a lot of that is to blame is the Madden Ultimate Team, is the microtransactions. And again, that's just one game. That's just one symptom. It's not the, cause, but it's just, you take a look at it. That's what's wrong with the gaming industry right now. And I'm hoping that the outrage, the hashtag Fix Madden franchise, for example, sort of gets them to change their things. But just how that company's gone, I'm not really holding my breath on it. We'll see. But it's something unthinkable. But I may just not buy that game anymore. That's something I never thought I'd say. But it's
one of the things we were talking about too is that sports games probably should start moving towards more of a generational game that you buy, and then each year you download a roster update and upgrades for less than $70, and then you get that long-term subscription type model. Ray, just to go back to college real quick, because I'm remembering these things. I think this is true, but I remember so Ray used to play NCAA football and then port his players into Madden.
Oh, okay? It's great.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure, and I don't ask me how to remember this, I'm pretty sure that I think it was in 2004, you had this high school kid in the college game named Cam Newton, because I remember because he was 6'5", and he somehow was in the game, and you got him through the NCAA all the way to the NFL. And I'm pretty sure he was the quarterback of your team at one point. I remember this because I remember a 6'5" quarterback.
Actually, I think it wasn't Cam Newton. It was before Cam Newton's time. But the guy basically was Cam Newton. He was a monster, and I think he was 6'7". And I recruited
stupid.
And I recruited him to Rutgers. And I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest signing I've ever had in any sports game. I got this 5-star giant of a quarterback.
Yeah, I remember watching you play this.
Who runs like a 4.5 40. And can launch the ball 80 yards. This is this is a great get for the university, and win a couple national championships with the guy, get him to Madden, draft him in the first round. I forget what team he went to, but the guy would get, these robots that basically you're getting them now, the Cam Newtons of the world, and quarterbacks like that. Marcus Mariota, not quite, because he's a lot skinnier, but the young man who just got drafted at Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa, for instance, that guy's just a machine. Yeah. And I'm sure he's healing well and will be a stud, but just like, there's little joy that you get out of doing little things like that. And it adds to the immersion. It adds to the experience of the game. And we haven't had that for a long time. I understand why we can't have NCAA anymore. I get the whole Ed O'Bannon lawsuits and all that. Okay, I get it. But it's no excuse for Madden not to be as playable as it once was.
I remember you like I got to get this kid through college and get him into Madden. Like, I'm watching his GPA. Like, we're gonna make this.
Oh, that's right. That used to be a thing. You had to make sure guys were passing their classes too.
Yeah, like Ray, we got to get the class. Yeah, but this guy's got to get to the NFL league. Do you understand his life?
I got to get him to class. I've got to get him to class.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing. I remember you playing those games. But listen, one thing I do want to talk about while we have you on is obviously, you work in the city, you work at ESPN Radio and Sirius, correct? So
actually, Sirius actually puts to the wayside right now. The other part is MSG Networks now, so producing.
Oh, that's right. Radio. Absolutely. How did I forget to mention that? So,
XM hasn't been an issue, hasn't been a thing for about a year now, and we left on good terms, but couldn't do all three. Could only do two.
For sure. So. It's a beautiful correction there. So, like, here's the question I have.
Problem to have.
Yeah. Obviously the pandemic with sports. I mean, we don't have to explain to our audience what's going on. You have a different perspective on this working in sports in general. So, what has it been like for you? Like, what's it been like for the hosts of your shows, with the sports coming back? What's that world like for you right now? Because it's you're on it every day, and you're hearing everybody talk about, some people now, we don't need this back. It's not important. Health is important, which Ray and I both disagree with. We think sports need to come back soon for lots of different reasons. But you're in the trenches really of sports broadcasting, right? So what is that like being in that world right now?
Well, I'll take this from the sports radio standpoint first, because that's the thing I've been doing all this time. I was working for MSG Networks for the Knicks and Rangers. They were both playing the same night that everything came to a grinding halt. The Knicks were in, I want to say they were in Washington or Atlanta. I can't remember. And the Rangers were in Colorado, I believe. And, I just monitor Twitter, because you want to see what the team PRs are saying. That way you can get something to our announcers, get in their ear, And I saw something about the NBA game in Oklahoma City that night being delayed because there was a reported infection in one of the locker rooms. And they didn't say who it was. And I remember that day before was the whole Rudy Gobert incident where he's sort of grabbing the microphone and making a general jerk of himself. And so just monitoring that and, getting in guys' ears, because I was actually going back and forth between studios, producing two games at the same time. And so I get into my basketball announcer's hair, and I say, hey, I want you guys to keep an eye on this thing in Oklahoma City. I don't know how this will affect you, but it looks like, hey, this thing is here. It might affect us. I don't know how, just be on the lookout for anything. We got into a break, and I went over to and I said the same thing to my hockey guys, Kenny Albert and Dave Maloney. And say, hey, this doesn't seem to be affecting the NHL right now, but and the news was coming very, very fast. It felt like every 5 minutes there was another press release or something coming out, and then the NBA said we're canceling this game. I saw the actual, as it was happening in Oklahoma City, of the people in the arena being told, look, you have to leave. Everyone must leave the arena now. There will be no game tonight. As that was happening, the NBA put out a press release we're monitoring the situation. Things may change. The NHL put one out maybe 10 minutes later, sort of similar. Then it was okay. The games that were going to take place tonight that have not started are not happening. The games that are taking place right now, They will finish the teams that are supposed to fly out from wherever. You're not flying anywhere. Stay there. The Knicks have to stay in Atlanta. The Rangers have to stay in Colorado. You're not going to your next destination. I think the Rangers had to have they were in the midst of their West Coast trip, their final West Coast trip.
I think they're going to Arizona next.
Yes, they were. And the Knicks were going to go to, if they were in DC, they were going to go to Atlanta. But and then those things just happen. It's like, okay, the season is on hold. We don't know what's going to happen. I'm rambling now, but to get to my point, like, it was just kind of like a scary situation. Hey, guys, we don't know what's happening. We don't know. The season may come to a halt. We don't know whether we're going to come back. We don't know when we're going to come back. Thankfully, we're sort of heading towards that now. Now, transitioning to the job at ESPN, it became, okay, well, we'll react to this for now. This is terrifying. We have a lot to talk about. But when this runs out, what are we going to do until sports comes back? And this has really, like, pushed our creativity as content creators, I guess, is we had to do a bunch of whole different elements and add them to our shows and maybe talk more about everyday minutia to stay engaged with our audience. And yeah, things kind of took a hit for a while there, but I gotta say I'm kind of pleased with how not only my particular show, DiPietro, Canty, Rothenberg, Rick DiPietro, the former Islanders goalie, Chris Canty, former Cowboys Giants, he won a Super Bowl with the Giants, defensive lineman, and Dave Rothenberg, who is the most savage fan of any team that I've ever known. But not only that show, but the show following us, Alan Hahn, Bart Scott, the Michael Kay show after that. Every show has done just a remarkable job of being creative and being able to talk about new things, get more guests involved. And as solely as we've kind of built that momentum towards getting sports back, we've gotten a few more things to talk about, obviously, as relating to the virus, but also, like, as things head towards the restart. And thankfully I've been in communication with people at the NHL. The schedules quasi came out today. We know the dates teams are going to play for that play-in round. We know the sort of plan. I'm not at liberty to say what the plan will be for us as broadcasters once we get going back on that, but I'm making basically contingencies for that as we speak. I'll probably have to make some calls when I get done with you guys, but we're sort of ramping up and we're sort of getting back to having something to talk about other than terrifying. But in the back of my mind, I've got to say that I am a little bit worried, terrified even, because of the way things have gone in other parts of the country. We're in Jersey. We're getting, we're sort of bouncing back from it. I saw a map that said, like, we have a better rate of keeping it down right now than any other state in the country, which, because we followed some protocol. I wish other states had done the same. Maybe we're not in this situation, because my main concern is that it's going to come back. And the worst thing that could happen for us, and again, it's just sports, I understand that, but is if we restart and then we have to stop again before, a Stanley Cup champion is crowned, before an NBA champion is crowned. God forbid the baseball season doesn't finish. I'll say this much. The only thing I know for sure, 100%, is that the NFL is going to report to training camp on time, because they're the NFL and nothing stops this trade and we're going to go. Now, whether the NFL is going to finish, I couldn't tell you. They're going to try to start on time. Yeah. But I'm so worried that we're going to have some sort of setback. And I'm just hoping against all hope that it's not going to happen, because we need this, not just for, me, because it's my job, but we need the distraction. We desperately need it as a country.
Yeah, and it might be a good excuse for people to stay home and just watch stuff, because, I'm out here in LA. North seems to be the only part of the country where things have cooled down. Originally the epicenter. Now the epicenter is Florida and Texas, and out here in LA, it's terrible here in California. It's gotten worse, and everything's shut down again. And it's one of those things. That's why also smartly the NHL is doing all their stuff in Canada, a country that got things under control. Toronto and Edmonton are the two hub cities. It's a very scary thing, and it definitely, and like you said, if baseball starts and doesn't finish, baseball itself might be finished, because I think it did such a disservice to itself with all the arguments and all the social media back and forth, and there's so many people it felt like 1994 all over again, but worse because of social media now. Like the temperature, everybody's temperature is even more raised, plus the stress of the virus on top of everything. And I think there's a lot of fans that they could potentially lose if things don't get under control. Aroldis Chapman of the Yankees, third Yankee, I think it came out today that he has the virus.
Yeah.
DJ LeMahieu, fortunately, asymptomatic. Luis Cessa, supposedly minor symptoms. But then you have somebody like Freddie Freeman in Atlanta who's supposedly been hit by like a ton of bricks with it, who's really has a very serious case of it, and you're just hoping that.
Well, to your point, Buster Posey's one of the best catchers in the game, and he's opting out of this season, and for a good reason. He's just adopted two set of twins that was born prematurely, and they're in the NICU right now, and he's. Smartly, I would say, like, I'm just not going to take a chance this year. And, fortunately for Buster Posey, he's in a position where he's made a lot of money and he can, afford to not play baseball this season. A lot of people aren't in that position. But,
a lot of young guys, a lot of guys who probably would have been on the expanded roster or whatnot now might get put into starting positions. And it'll be interesting to see if baseball continues where a lot of these guys go, because as sad as it is to think like that, it could also be an opportunity for some guys if they play well in this shortened season in the future, as something as like you're gonna have minor leaguers now take again. Just thinking in baseball terms, you're obviously hoping nobody's gonna like Wally Pipp, Buster Posey, I don't believe, but but yeah, David Price, Mike Trout's talking about it, Ian Desmond in Colorado. A lot of guys are opting out, and rightly so, and understandably so. We've said it on the show before. If you opt out, we are for you. If you play, we are for you. We are not anybody who wants to make that. That's a personal decision. If you don't want to play, more power to you, because like you said,
no judgment.
It's understandable. Yeah. It's a tough time right now.
Ray, I'll tell you two things that your story kind of made me realize. One is that I think it's incredibly impressive that you were producing two live games at the same time. Number one, for those of you listening, don't realize that happens. It's a job. The other thing too is, what's funny about that week, and it's funny when we look back on the week this happened now, because it's a hell of a lot scarier now for me at least, than it was then. Because I remember when it happened then, it was like, okay, we're just taking precautions. We didn't really realize at that point how bad this was going to get that week. I've made the statement before that, Rudy Gobert, it's like, he may have saved a lot of lives inadvertently. I mean, although it was stupid what he did, he was the catalyst that shut the country down. So like, can you imagine if that had gone on for another week, where stadiums were filled for another week? But it's funny looking back on it now, because it's scary to think about when we know that we know what the virus does, right? And it shut down the sports world of America, like it's sports world, but it's just shut us down. Like, it's scary now looking back on it. But it's also, as you said, while it's scary looking forward as well, it's also kind of this welcome, like, we really need this right now. We just desperately need the distraction. And, one thing that we've talked about on the show again is it looks like the leagues are doing everything they can possibly think of to keep these players safe. And like, we had Mark Friedman on from the Flyers, and he was talking about how often they were testing him. The NBA has those rings, those option rings, so the players don't have to wear them. But you got to hope, A, that those precautions work. B, somebody brought up this point the other day on our page, like, well, all these sports fans are going to go to the bars and watch the game. And I'm like, first off, any bar that's open for that, it's got to
right.
Yeah.
All
I can tell you right now, at least
no.
out here, the bars are closed again, so nobody's watching anything.
Like the point is to stay at home, right? Stay at home and watch it. That might actually be it. I do want to segue. I have to ask you about this too. Having been part of ESPN, we got a gift during all this with The Last Dance, which was really what I mean. There were a few things, non-political stupidity things that distracted us during the pandemic. Tiger King, which seems like 9 years ago, which Ray and I didn't watch, but that happened.
I refused to watch.
Yeah, okay. And then we got The Last Dance.
I got to tell you, Jen and I got through 3 episodes of Tiger King, and she was done.
If I want to watch that, I'll get in my time machine. I'll go back to 94 and watch Jerry Springer if I want to see that. All right. But, the thing is that, like, then The Last Dance came out. And I remember, because I was excited about that before the pandemic. But what a gift. And here's the thing. ESPN, as a network as a whole, and again, Ray, you work at ESPN Radio, so I'm talking about ESPN as a whole. There was a time period there where, in my opinion, they were treading water, right? They had lost their luster a bit. in terms of what they were doing. And it didn't mean they weren't strong. It didn't mean that, they were still ESPN, but the world got bigger in terms of sports broadcasting. And then they come out with The Last Dance, which in my opinion is completely going to change the game of sports documentaries moving forward and documentaries in general. Now, we know that. Not to mention, brilliantly produced. Obviously, the way that was put together, it kept your attention every episode. So this is the question I'm leading to. Talk about rambling, right? A, get your thoughts on that being part of ESPN, and B, where are we going with that? Because that was a grand slam. It wasn't just a home run, right? Are we going to see more of these in the future? Is ESPN going to pivot towards doing more of these? Obviously, they've been doing 30 for 30 for a long time. Mm-hmm. Where is this going with ESPN?
Well, it's tough, and I know exactly what you mean about ESPN as a company, because ESPN built its brand off the SportsCenter vehicle. And unfortunately, what's happened is, well, fortunately and unfortunately, because we're so much more connected now, the world has evolved, the world has changed, and SportsCenter, is kind of not needed to the level that it used to be. When we were kids, we used to wake up as we were getting ready for school. I got to check SportsCenter. I got to get the scores.
That's right. That's what we did.
Now it's, hey, let me put my phone in. Yep. All right, I'm good. So we're not watching the highlight packages anymore. We're not watching, Stuart Scott deliver, rest in peace, Stuart Scott. We're not getting the great catchphrases, the booyah from Stuart Scott. It's like the SportsCenter anchor is not as prevalent anymore at SportsCenter itself. So ESPN has had to evolve as a company, and the 30 for 30s you mentioned was a great stepping stone in that direction. I remember the first 30 for 30 was the Miami one, It's All About the U, and that was received similarly to the Last Dance, and that, oh my God, this is incredible. We need more stuff like this. And then 30 for 30 just kind of took off, and almost every 30 for 30 that I've ever seen is just amazing great stuff. And then we got The Last Dance. Now, The Last Dance is special because, A, they were sitting on that footage for 20 years. They never, it was something, and I get why Michael Jordan wanted it that way. Just, he was like, I'm saving this. He's Michael Jordan. He can do whatever he wants. He wants to do with the Charlotte Hornets, whatever. But, he kind of put that thing out there, and it's very convenient. It's like, oh, just when you were starting to forget about who I was, like all you knew about me was that I was the guy on the sneakers and that I'm the crying guy in that meme that everyone shares. I'm going to show you why I'm the greatest of all time. Brilliant. And it reignited that old LeBron Jordan thing. I mean, the great scene that I'll always remember from this documentary is the one where he's holding the baseball bat in his locker. He just sounds,
like De Niro,
like a mob boss or something.
He sounds, but the thing, he sounds like a movie villain. Like he sounds like Wesley Snipes in New Jack City. And I can only imagine if Michael Jordan were playing today. Like, would we all hate Michael Jordan if he were that guy playing today? But the point I'm trying to make is, like, the Last Dance. It's kind of hard to build on that because it is one of a kind to this point. Now we'll get more things like that as we go forward. I saw the next 30 for 30 actually is going to be the 1986 Mets, and immediately the first thing that sprung to my mind was, okay, and I'm going to break it back to The Last Dance, is when Michael Jordan talked about the traveling cocaine circus. Well, what's better than the traveling cocaine circus? How about the 86 Mets? Let's talk about that.
So the original cocaine
it intensifies.
So we're going to get a lot more. We're going to get a lot more. It's going to be tough to live up to the billing that was The Last Dance, but I think ESPN's found a nice little niche with the 30 for 30 series, these sports documentaries, and that's going to have to be the bread and butter for now. Other than that, the actual games themselves carrying the NBA it's going to have to be the vehicle. I don't really have the answer. If I did, I'd probably be a lot higher in the company than I am right now.
Here's what I think is that I think what ESPN has the wall they've broken through with that documentary is because a big part, the big reason they could do 10 hours is because they had the footage. I mean, that's a big part of it, is they had enough footage to make that. In fact, I had read an article that, like, there were early versions of that documentary that were like an hour or two. You know what I mean? And then everything evolved and they were able to do it, and they said that was the real challenge. So, you have to have the footage. But what the wall they broke through is, why do we have to make anything an hour? Like, we can make this as long as we want. If we have 4 hours, or we have 6 hours, 50 hours, probably not that. But we can make whatever we want. In fact, I remember when we were doing Geeks in the beginning, right? You know, like we got to get it done in 45 minutes. We just got to get it done. And eventually, like we realized, but we can't talk in 45 minutes. We need longer because of who we are. All right, that's number one. And it was like, the show is as long as it is. When the conversation ends, it ends. We don't have to fit into these, cubes anymore with a lot of our broadcasting. So like, I think that's the one. And if I'm not mistaken, like Long Gone Summer was not an hour. It was longer.
No,
I think it was like an hour and a half, right?
Yeah, and a lot of what you said sounds like what we go through in radio. Well, you can't take this segment past this many minutes. If it's a good segment, if it's good radio,
why?
if it's got people's ears plugged in, why?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
go to your break and come back, continue. That's it.
Now there is a rumor, and none of us are gonna be able to confirm this, but there is a rumor that Kobe filmed his last season as well. And now while I do not think we are ready for that at all right now, I do think that is something that's going to come out at some point. It's amazing that he passed this year still with everything that's going on. It's amazing that it was this year. It seems like a lot longer ago, but
this year's been a nightmare.
Yeah, as we talked about on the show, that one really shook me hard. But
can I not to interrupt you, but can I tell you the story about that one, because that one happened on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
I got my parents tickets to the Knicks game that afternoon. I don't even remember who they were playing. It was an afternoon game, and I'm getting ready. I'm pressing my suit in this room that I'm in right now, and I'm getting ready. And I got a text from my younger brother Jose, who's in LA actually himself right now, and he said that he's not as into sports as I am, but he knew who Kobe Bryant was, and he says like people out here are devastated, like. What are you talking about? And so like this guy really meant a lot to me. Like what happened? Like Kobe Bryant died. I'm like, that's a joke. That's not.
Yeah, that was my first thing too.
That's a mistake. And so I'm scrambling to like look at this, and then I'm just thinking like, boy, like I almost don't want to go to work now.
Yeah.
And then you snap out of it, because you get to do what you got to do, but then you realize that, boy, anything that I had a whole pregame show lined up, as I always do. Like we're gonna talk about this. We'll talk about this. We'll get a one-on-one with this player. We'll do that. Blew all of that up for the first time in any of my production. I was like, I talked to my bosses. We universally agreed. We're not going to do any pregame production. We're not going to use music. We're not going to do our ad reads. We'll have to make it up to them at a later date. We will go to break without music. We'll do the commercials. We'll go to the game. We're going to let Kobe have his moment. And getting through that game was just surreal because you're trying to you're trying to do your job. You're trying to focus, but you got this whole thing over the air. They had the moment of silence. They put a big Lakers logo via spotlight on the middle of the Knicks court.
There's a great picture of that.
Right. I took a picture of that and put it on my Instagram way back when it happened. It was probably the most difficult broadcast that I've ever had to do. But just like, thinking of a guy having that kind of impact and just how devastated everyone, like that day, it's all just a blur. I don't know how I got through it, to be honest with you, but I'm sorry to hijack your thought there.
No, listen, Ray, you bring up a good point. Like, that's the power of sports. I mean, if anything, that, like, again, it's a completely different situation than coronavirus, but like sports is what got you get through it, because you got to go do what you got to do. It's, you know what I mean? And like, that's what Kobe would have done 100%. I mean, we all know that. I've read his book since then. And, it's funny that all three of us said that. I remember, and this is just because we were taught good in broadcasting school, but the first thing we all did was we went to the internet. Like, there's got to be a source, right? Yeah. And I remember there being 100 sources and being like, oh my God, this is real. You know what I mean? But listen, this is another, and Ray, you can comment on this. I understand everyone's health fears with sports. I acknowledge them. I don't want anyone to think I don't think about that, because I do.
Yeah.
The healing power of sports and the amount of things that have happened, the game you just spoke about, the first pitch after 9/11. I mean, there's so many moments that bring us back together. I even understand some of the athletes saying, look, this is going to distract from what's going on in our cities. But, with that said, the NBA players have really been creative, and I mean that in a good way, of making sure that they're still sending those messages out. But we need this back. I don't know how to really put that into words the right way, of the healing power of sports for a good majority of the nation. Obviously, not everybody's a sports fan, but obviously you said you're making plans to come back, right? How aware is ESPN of this? How aware are the hosts? How aware are the athletes from your point of view?
1,000%. They're 1,000% of the weight that sports carry. But this is what the importance of why, we need to make sure that we as a country, it's on us. It's not on the sports leagues. It's not on the players. It's not on the owner. It's on us to make sure that we do everything right, so that when we do get our sports back, they don't have to get taken away again, which is I'm terrified. Like that, the fact that the NBA is in a bubble city at Disney World in Orlando, Florida, and Florida is a petri dish right now of it's terrifying to me. I pray that the bubble doesn't get a hole in it, for lack of a better term, and that infection doesn't run rampant in there. It's probably the biggest one, but then you've got the biggest thing to me that's terrifying is the NHL and NFL ones, because those sports are so high contact. Yeah. And with hockey, maybe you can manage it a little better because you can use somewhat face shields, but even though your mouth is not going to be covered, but you'll have, so you have a little bit of something, and the contact is not as prevalent. Football, those guys are touching each other every play, and they're hitting each other every play. And when you hit people, sometimes fluid comes out of your mouth. Blood, sweat, tears. That's that actual thing that happens in all sports, but football especially, and it's happening every day. Which is why I kind of laughed at this NFL note. There's like no jersey exchanging and no player contact at the post games. Like, they're going to tackle each other 120 times in the game. Yeah. What do you care if they're going to swap jerseys at that point? And it's just like I just want things to be done right so we don't stop again. And I'm the biggest fear to me is that players are getting affected. Yes, we've gotten that. You mentioned Aroldis Chapman. My concern is that a player dies. If that happens, because everyone's like, yes, I understand that if you have pre-existing conditions, you're at a higher risk of infection and the infection doing some worse damage to you. But, obesity is a pre-existing condition. It doesn't take much. And unfortunately, there's been too many cases where somebody who's in perfect health and young, I've seen a baseball player, I've seen a personal trainer, I've seen doctors, nurses, the list goes on and on. You don't have to have a pre-existing condition for this to take your life away. No. So everything that we can do to protect ourselves and by proxy protect the players so that we do have it. Yes, I do. I 1,000% agree with you, Julie, that we need sports to come back. We need it for a multitude of reasons. But if we do it wrong, I don't want sports to come back at the expense of anyone's life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect. I mean, that's the quote. That's the quote right there. It's can we do that? And like as Ray said earlier, that's why the NHL is going to Canada. Someone asked, why are they going to Canada? Because there's 30 million people up there and hardly any virus. That's why they're going up there. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. But we know the NFL is looking at kind of different helmets. But as you said, they're going to be touching each other. And the NBA, I mean, you're guarding someone, you're getting sweat on. That's just the way it is. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. It's all starting now. I mean, really, they're ramping up right now. And I'll just say this, Ray, I'm with you. I'm praying it's done right and we can get through this and just, have something to help heal us. But I'll tell you what, if we don't, we'll know where we really stand with this thing, and we'll know how dangerous it actually is moving forward. But let's switch the polarity a little bit. We talked about the hardest broadcast you ever had to do that a minute ago. We do want people to keep listening.
It's been a heavy episode.
That's okay. We're not afraid to do it. Like I said, if I wish I could get a time machine and go back to 2004 and show us this episode. That would be interesting. But let's talk about your favorite game you ever did, or a moment that you got to witness in person. I know you've seen a few. What sticks in your mind is like, I was at this and I was proud to be at this.
This one's easy because it was actually one of the last games that we got to do, and it was the Mika Zibanejad 5-goal game.
Yes.
Nice. Let me say that game was incredible because it had all of the emotions. Not only the fact that, oh my God, like he keeps scoring, but also like they blew the lead like 3 times in that game, did the Rangers.
It was a Rangers game, yeah.
Yes. And I don't know if you like, we have a lot of talent on the blue line, but a lot of mistakes happen on the blue line. And, Henrik Lundqvist is 38 years old now, so he doesn't quite make all the saves that he used to save. But so that game just ran the gamut of emotions of just, oh my God, like we're losing. Hey, we're coming back. Hey, we're winning. Awesome. And we just gave the lead back and we just let up a goal with a minute left, which I think the Rangers have done like 8 or 9 times this year. They let up a goal in the last minute or two, and it ended up costing them a win. Either they lost in OT or they just outright lost. And it was just becoming a running theme. So when that happened again, and then Mika scored like 40 seconds later, it was incredible. And I was actually, because what I do at the end of the game, I usually get a post-game interview with the guy. I'll grab the guy, get a headset on him. Hey, they want to talk to you upstairs. So I got, as customary, I get a player for the walk-off that the Rangers PR gets me. And for obvious reasons, it's not going to be Mika because TV's going to get him. The reporters are going to swarm him. And, radio's not high on the totem pole. I get that, So I speak to another player, and it's probably one of the young guys, probably Brett Howden, who's probably my favorite guy to speak to because every time he comes out, he gets really excited. And because he and I have a running joke, oh, that means you're going to score today. He's like, every time I talk to this guy, I score, man. So I'm really rooting for that kid every time. But so I get that done, and we do the post game, and I'm just hanging out there. And obviously, because of the circumstances, the post game is running a little long. And so I was just kind of, I poked my head in the locker room, and I'm just talking to the PR guys, and the guys at the Rangers are awesome, fantastic guys. It's like you don't think there's a chance we can talk to Mika for our game, even if it's at the end of the post game show. Like, hey, you know what, man, you don't lose anything by asking. So I go up to him, and literally, everybody in the world wants to talk to this guy for obvious reasons. The ownership, John Davidson, we love JD. JD is awesome. Like, oh, great job today. Great. Just reporters all swarming him, ask him 500 questions about the night. So they all wrap up. I kind of hang back. He's letting it all kind of sink in. He's still got his pants on. He's still got, so, hey, man, I know everybody in the world has wanted to talk to you. If you have 2 minutes, if you want to just chat to these guys outside, yeah, man, no problem. I'll walk with you right now. We'll do this now. He walks out there. He's clearly limping because he's been on skates for 50 minutes. He just goes out there. He pops the headset on. He does the thing, and he does the interview. I just tell him at the end, like, hey, man, listen, I really appreciate that. You didn't have to. You had a lot going on. You just played literally the game of your life. You'd be well within your rights to just say, I'm tired, man. It's all good. So really appreciate that. It's like, man, that's really awesome. And for that particular guy, most of the guys on the team have been outstanding individuals, but for that guy who I'm praying for him that he's going to be the next Rangers captain, but just awesome guy, and I'll always root for him no matter where he goes.
I got to say this, Ray. I really don't appreciate you making me like another Ranger. Okay? I just, no, not right now, Gritty. Gritty, no. This is not your time, okay? All right? No, listen. There's something, we talked about this, and Ray, you're the perfect person to bring this up with, because I've said this on the show. There's something different about MSG. I've worked at Madison Square Garden. Ray has worked there. You have worked there. There is just something different about that building where magic happens every day. And again, I've worked in other buildings, and I don't know what it is about Madison Square Garden, but I mean, even in the time I've worked there, I mean, and I'm not going to tell all my stories because this is about you. But it's just like things would happen that are just miraculous or unbelievable in sports, keeping this in perspective. But the people you meet and the way that they're treated working with the Knicks and the Rangers, it's unbelievable. So like, I remember when you got this job at MSG, which makes me even more embarrassed that we didn't bring that up in the beginning. But I remember how both Ray and I were super like, finally, like this, you're getting what you deserve, right? But like you're there on a nightly basis and you're seeing this. I mean, just talk about MSG for a second and the environment and the aura for everyone around the country who watches the show that can't get there.
Listen, it's everything that you just said. It's that there's a reason that basketball fans call it the Mecca. the world's most famous arena, anything that you can think of. Like, it's the grandest stage of them all, and players, whether you play for the home team or you're coming in as a visitor, you want to put on a stellar performance every time. And even, I've taken over. The Knicks and Rangers were not in good places. The Rangers had just sent out the letter. They were rebuilding. We knew that one of the saddest nights, actually, we knew that they were going to trade Matt Zuccarello, who, while not a star, was a very beloved player because he's a fan favorite. He's a smaller guy, kind of came out of nowhere, and he just kind of and ingrained himself to the fan base. Yeah. And so, you have instances like that where when he got traded and Lundqvist cried like a baby in the locker room because his best friend just left the team. As far as the Knicks go, I mean, I don't even need to go into their struggles. It's been a long, well-documented road struggling for the Knicks. But even still, like, the building fills and people come to cheer, no matter the circumstances for the teams. And now that you're hoping that things are starting to look a little up for both of them. I mean, the Rangers have this shot to make some noise in the playoffs. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's technically not the playoffs. They're doing the play-in first. But, like, they have a chance. And this is a team that, I mean, it doesn't guarantee anything, but Carolina, that's a team that they've dominated over the last few years. Yeah. So they have as good a chance, they have as good a chance as anybody to pull off an upset in that best of five. And the Knicks have revamped their front office entirely. And I like everything that they've done so far. Leon Rose is a great president. He's a guy with so many connections. And what they did is they didn't go for all these splashy big name hires like they've done over the last 15 years.
Isaiah Thomas and everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. He hired a man to do just straight capologist stuff. This is the guy I'm drawing a blank on the name right now. I think it's Zenin or something like that. The guy who worked in Cleveland. And Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavaliers, said that the man is to the salary cap what accountants are to the IRS or something like that. Like, this man's a genius. He hired a new college scout. He hired a new pro scout, and you're hoping that they're going to do things the right way. So the long and short of what I'm trying to say is, even though the teams have kind of struggled in their own way, the building was still felt electric. And I can only imagine. MSG TV just did something Patrick Ewing week this week. And they were playing when both teams had their finals run in 1994, when the Rangers won the Cup and the Knicks came within a game of winning the NBA Finals. And just like, I thought the building was loud when I was there. And it's like, no, it's nothing compared to this. Oh my God, playoff basketball, playoff hockey. And like, so it's been exciting. It's been great. And on nights like that Zibanejad night where he scores 5 goals, it's been incredible. I can't wait till I get to experience a real, genuine, drag 'em out playoff game in there, and it's going to be great when that actually happens.
It is and again, you guys know me. I own my companies now. I've worked a lot of places. That job, MSG, Madison Square Garden, is still the favorite job I have ever had. And like I said, I remember, and then Ray, I've been talking a lot. I'm sorry, but I remember.
What else is new?
Yeah,
no,
right.
I'm joking.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We'll rip on the Yankees in a minute. I remember thinking every night walking in there, I can't believe I'm getting paid to be here tonight. Like, I remember thinking that every single time I walked up the ramp, and I would walk up the ramp on purpose. I would walk up the ramp on purpose because there's just something about that. But for those you don't know, like we used to be able to get in the building. There's a player's entrance, and then there's this ramp that you can kind of go up, which is where everyone goes when they come in the building. It's like a famous thing. If you like Led Zeppelin, you might have seen that in their concert video. But every night, I cannot believe I'm being paid to be here. That set the bar for me as a business owner of, like, I want my employees to feel this way when they come to work. Right? All right.
Absolutely.
So, Ray, the Yankees and Phillies are playing. Who's winning? Go.
Well, you've got our old manager now, one Joe Girardi. we love Joe here.
We never should have rid of Joe.
Actually, you've got a guy who's a fan favorite here in Didi Gregorius. And you want to talk about what a great job Didi Gregorius did when he was a Yankee. He's the guy who replaced Derek Jeter. No one ever complained about Didi Gregorius. That should tell you everything you need to know about the type of player he is, about the type of guy he is.
Well, he's not going to work here then.
No. Philadelphia, you guys will love him. He'll become like the face of your team. Now, all that being said, I haven't kept up with the Phillies as much as I would other teams for obvious reasons. The Yankees, I don't know if you heard, they spent a lot of money on this pitcher, and they're really, really dedicated to trying to win the World Series. That they feel that they were robbed by some cheating team in Houston a couple of times.
Trash throws.
Are you picking that up on your microphones?
It's a slider. So, the Yankees have this goal. Like they need to win, even in a shortened season. Like they need to win the World Series this year.
They do. I don't disagree with you on that.
Yeah, it's World Series or bust this year.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that the Phillies and the Yankees are playing each other this year. Obviously, the interleague play was not going to be there. There's also this thing here. I have a note here. It says my team has a thing called a DH now.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy that.
I don't. We've never had that before in 100 years. No, I'm looking forward to that.
Can I just say, like, for God's sakes, National League, get with the times.
A friend of mine who you both know, Dan Saunders, made this great point because there's a lot of traditionalists on the NL side. And he made this great point. He's like, yeah, look, I get the traditionalists. He's like, guys, you'll love this. Like, nobody wants to be on a rally and then have your pitcher come up to bat. Nobody.
Yeah.
It doesn't help anybody.
Even if you pinch hit for him, you have a guy who's ice cold, who's having to try and see major league pitching. The DH.
There's no benefit other than it's tradition for teams not to use the DH.
I don't get it. So I'm looking forward.
And not for nothing, but a team that's really going to benefit from it in the National League is going to be the Mets because they have so many guys that are not really that great playing the field, but they have excellent bats, and it's going to work in a team like that's position. I'm sure there's other teams that applies to, but common sense, guys, common sense.
Yeah, Ray and I have joked that this is the type of season where the Mets do something and win because they can't just do it normally. You know what I mean?
Yes.
This is the type of season they come out of nowhere oh, wow, the Mets are really good this year. Yeah, it's because they don't have the full season to play. Anyway, I'm sorry. Ray, go ahead.
Subway Series 2, maybe. Yankees versus Mets. I'll take it. Because I love to see the Dodgers lose out here. I hate the Dodgers so much. It's going to be an interesting year. Obviously, you mentioned Garrett Cole. It's a big year also for the Yankees because it's World Series or bust this year because they have a lot of free agents at the end of this year, especially in the rotation. They've already said it's already been hinted at they're not going to re-sign both Paxton and Tanaka. Ray, what are your thoughts on the state of the staff, especially after giving Cole such a huge contract, and where the Yankees go in the future?
Well, listen, there's no mistaking that the weak spot of the team over the last few years was not having that stud that they could count on in the rotation where, the Andy Pettitte role, as it were. Hey, we're in trouble. We really need to win this game tonight. A complete game, maybe, one run at most performance would really be useful right about now. They haven't really had that guy since Tanaka was first signed. And even then he was kind of, even at his best,
since CeCe first signed, I would say.
Yeah, since CeCe was in his prime was what I was going to say. But Tanaka has been as good as I expected him to be, more or less. But the thing with him is even when he's on, he's still capable of giving up that home run here or there, even when he's on, which is kind of the evil you kind of take with him. But hopefully he's good. No ill effects from the line drive to the head. But but you pointed out there, that's another example, why the team has to kind of come through this year because you're losing to those two guys. Listen, they're not to the level of Garrett Cole, obviously, but they are reliable. And having something reliable on the mound, especially now, where the season's going to be shorter, you can't afford to have a bad start. In the past, you could afford to. We're 1-7 out of the gate. It's not. We'll be fine. It's not a big deal. The '98 Yankees had a god awful start. But hey, the nice thing about that, there's 162 games. Well, now there's only 60. You're not really going to have a lot of room to make that up. So starting hot is going to be vital. And to do that, especially because you may be down some key guys, you'll have the taxi squad, but you're going to need those arms. Those arms are going to have to come through. And I don't see them spending money next year on another big contract. They're not the George Steinbrenner Yankees anymore, where there's like, hey, there's that guy out there. We want him. Let's sign him. I don't care what. He wants $200 million? Fine. Here's my purse. Go nuts. We don't have that to fall back on anymore. And there's a lot more teams that are on a level playing field with the Yankees. So you can't count on, we're probably not going to win a World Series this year, but that's okay. We can win one next year. No, you kind of have to go for it while you can. Now, don't sell out and destroy yourself. Like, don't go all out like the Cubs did to win their World Series. Like, that's a little different. They waited 100-something years.
Right.
But for the Yankees, it's now been 10 years, which may as well be 100 years in Yankee years. So it's kind of like,
this is what I'm saying. I'm going to say this to both of you now, okay? Because I'm not a Yankees fan, all right? If and when they win the World Series, to all of our listeners out there, keeping in mind what Ray just said, it has been a while since they've won a World Series, number one. Number two, they're going to be a legitimate champion. Now, why am I saying that? Because I lived in Northern Jersey for a decade, and I know I can already hear everybody up there talking about it when they went, don't you tell me they're not a legit champion. The whole country is going to come down on you guys. I don't want to be part of that conversation, so I'm removing myself out of it now by just saying,
well, like I've told you before, Lee, when we win this year, it's knock on wood. It's just to make up for 94 for the strike shortened season. It's the mulligan.
I'm not.
That's what a Yankee fan would say.
Even back then, I wasn't so sure that they would have beat that Expos team. That
Expos team was loaded. That was a very good Expos. That would have been a great World Series if no matter what, because the Yankees were running away with the East that year. It was pretty much, not that obviously we'll never know, but they were pretty much the Expos and Yankees. It was pretty much a done deal. That was going to be the World Series that year. That basically killed baseball in Montreal. And obviously the Yankees then regressed a bit. Obviously 95, we know what happened with Seattle. Don't want to talk about it. Things worked out in the end.
It seems like such a long time ago, because at that time I'm 11, 12 years old, and I'm crying as that winning run comes in the Kingdom. And because you got to understand, at that point in my life, the Yankees, they're the Yankees, but they hadn't won a World Series since the 70s. I was
I don't feel bad for either of you. Both of you should shut up.
No, but think about that. Think about that though, Lee. When the Yankees won in '96, before the Yankees won in '96, the Phillies had won a World Series sooner than the Yankees had. Like Ray mentioned, it had been '78.
Not one of us, right? Give me a break. You guys have so many. You're never gonna convince me to be like, oh man, poor you. It's never gonna happen. All right. Yankees. All right. If you have kids,
as we both me and Ray are wearing our Yankees shirts here.
I love this thing. That's the best thing that happened last year. But this was the best part of last year.
Yes.
Listen, can't say that enough.
If you guys have kids and they have never seen a championship, I'll feel bad for your kids. I'm not feeling bad for either of you two. All right? You've gotten everything you've wanted in your life with sports. Give me a break. You even got the cup. I don't even have a cup.
Yeah.
You might get one this year. Yeah, but you might get one this year.
Ray, we were joking about that. I said the Flyers the Flyers would win this year where nobody in our city can celebrate about it. That's exactly what they would do to my city. Like this is the year they would win.
Listen, it's Philadelphia. You'll find a way. They greased up telephone poles for you when the Eagles won. So you know what? People will find a way.
Here's what I'll say: with every sports league, it is impossible to predict any champion right now. I do agree with what you guys are saying about the Yankees, and this really is the year but it is so impossible, especially like in the NHL. People have been asking me, like, I can't tell you who's going to win. Like suddenly Tampa Bay, who's been an afterthought this year, is completely healthy with that team that was the best team in the league.
A lot of teams now, Tampa, Colorado, even the Rangers got healthy. Like Chris Kreider will be back now. Like it's going to be fun. It's going to be very fun. Igor is finally recovered from his Brooklyn driving incident.
By the way, that they said that the car that hit him was a dark limousine, and the license plate was King 30, I think.
I'm back. So listen, real quick again, transitioning to games, if I may. Ray, I did have a suggestion for you. You said you like side scrollers. You should definitely check out Mega Man 11.
Love Mega Man. Big Mega Man fan. Love him.
You would like that game. And Yeah, there's lots of stuff coming up. Anyway, Ray, I'm throwing the transition back to you because I've got nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that because this is what happens. Like, I mean, obviously we're 3 old friends. We could talk forever. We could probably just keep on going. But I think that this is probably actually a good time to probably hang up our headphones and our microphones and let Ray get back to his Saturday. I feel bad. Like, no. Okay, how about let me go get lunch?
This is just an intermission.
It's lunchtime for you.
I haven't eaten yet today. Yeah, I know. When Lee's like, so we're gonna record at noon your time. I'm like, okay, I don't need to eat.
Whatever. That's breakfast time for you. Give me a break.
Listen. I put aside eating for you. I could have been eating a burger right now, but I wanted to chat to you guys.
Okay, do you want to guys keep going? Because we could keep going. We can talk about.
I'm joking. We could keep going. What we'll do is we'll commit Ray now to another episode at some point in the future.
That's the thing I was about to say is that we have the open invite and that Ray can come back whenever he wants. We will have him back on to talk about sports, obviously, when we can actually analyze what's going on in the world a little bit more. I mean, even more so. But I think that this was a fun episode. It was great getting back together.
Yeah, we'll talk when the Rangers and Flyers meet in the I don't know which round it'll be. Because you're doing a round robin on your side, correct?
Yes, my team was good enough to get to that position.
Oh well, good for you.
Well, hey, we'll see what happens. Playoff hockey.
Well, listen. Not for nothing, but every time the Flyers and Rangers played this year, it got ugly. So
you don't know what's going to happen if those two teams miss the playoffs. You don't know. But
it could be fun.
Listen, I think it'll be very fun.
Let's worry about getting past Carolina first.
Yes,
that'd be great. That'd be great. And actually, I was mentioning that before, just on a closing note with the Rangers. It's really nice that team being in the position it's in less than 2 years after they basically said, listen, guys, we had a great run. We had like 10 years to try to win this cup. It didn't happen. We came so close. We're probably going to get rid of everybody who was important to this team at one point. And I mean, the main guys left are Stahl, Lundqvist, Kreider, and Fost came on at the end of it. But I mean, I don't see him coming back this year. So
he's not going to reach.
But I mean, just like it'll be nice to get one last run out of those guys, and just I'm hoping that they'll get something done this year. But if not, hey, there's a 12% chance at that first pick, so it's all good.
I was just gonna say, hey man, you could get the first pick in the draft. You don't know.
Oh man, all right. Well, Ray, thank you again so much for coming on, buddy. We could literally I could talk to you about the Rangers, what they should do with Lundqvist, Fost not being re-signed.
It's been awesome catching up with you guys, man. It really brought back a lot of memories, and it was awesome to do. So thank you.
It goes both ways, buddy.
Yeah, no, seriously. And if you guys ever need anybody to talk about sports video games at ESPN, I'm available.
we got to have sports. We go there. Yeah. Sports video games, one thing at a time.
I'm just joking, buddy. Anyway, thank you again for coming on. This has been the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard interviews with Ray Santiago. Thank you guys for listening. As always, for Lee, I'm Ray. We will see you next time with more Geeks Who Like Sports.
See you in the stands.
Forgot about that.